era meeting. I might also want to welcome the folks that are along with us on Zoom, and you might want to make sure that you are muted. So I will be the only one that's actually on the microphone. And while we're doing this, I want to thank Elizabeth sincerely for being able to pull together with, obviously with Pam's help here recently, the technology to be able to do this. And we'll see how it goes. This is our first attempt at both a face-to-face as well as a Zoom presentation. So welcome everyone. I'm Chris Colby, current president of the Rochester Rotary Club, and we are excited to be back together. So we have our first agenda item, four-way test. Sarah Gilliland will lead us. I think I can get this microphone out of here.
I could just talk loud.
Speak loud. Speak. You have to speak into the microphone.
Oh, people on Zoom. Okay. Good morning, afternoon, everyone. It is so exciting to be here. I think it's the first time I've had on real shoes other than slippers and sneakers since March. So great. Please join me in reciting the four-way test. And for those of you who may not be familiar, it's right here on the sign. Of all the things we think, say, or do, first, is it true? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Sarah. For our reflection today, Janine Gagnes will lead us in a reflection. And Janine is on Zoom, and I'm assuming she's ready.
I am ready. Can you hear me?
Yes. Fantastic.
I have a poem today. It's called In Good Time, and it is written by Ambimbola Alabi, and she writes, life can seem an endless maze, the twists and turns, lulls and delays, but things always fall into place in good time. Friends will sometimes go away, some may disappear or others betray, but new ones will come to stay in good time. The hurt of getting something wrong and the lesson it often brings along are there, you see, to make you strong in good time. Kindness freely given away, unnoticed now, will somehow find its way back to you and come to stay in good time. Efforts seem not to pay to plan. Forge on, friend, doing the best you can. Fortune will find the deserving man in good time. Life can be tough, there's no doubt, but hope is the thing we can't do without. Right things with joy will come about in good time. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Got our microphone correct. Can you still hear me okay?
Can't see you, but when you hear me.
All right. We have one sad item to mention today as well. Jeff Allman, fellow Rotarian, who lost his son earlier this week in a tragic accident, hiking accident up in northern Minnesota. And so we all express our condolences, Jeff, and to you and your family. For those of you who aren't aware of that, Jeff and Barb and their family lived across the street from us in Bailey Estates for many years. And so we got to know Daniel a bit, and was a fine young man, and he will certainly be missed by his family, I'm sure. welcome to our visiting Rotarians. This is a little bit difficult because we have visitors here in our room, and so perhaps for the sake of introductions, we can first do the people in the room, and then if there are any visitors online or on Zoom, we could ask you to unmute or wave your hands or do something so we know we can unmute you. So I'd like to introduce Joanne. Joanne, maybe perhaps you could introduce yourself.
You'll hear from me in a few minutes.
Right. Who else have we got here? Okay, Mark. Pam Meyer, who is the director of the Olmsted Quarry Hill Nature Center. She'll be our program. She'll be introduced a bit later.
So I have a couple of guests with me, but I'm only going to introduce one right now, and this is Jason Dukin. He's the executive for the Game Haven Council here in southeastern Minnesota, and do lots of wonderful things with Jason, and of course Jeff is well acquainted with him because he's the council president, so these two interact very closely together.
Very good, welcome. Do we have any other visitors here? I don't see any. Have we got any online, Elizabeth? Currently not, so. Okay, so welcome everyone, and we'll continue on our program. Rotary next week, we have, next Wednesday, we have the Rotary golf outing, September 16th, Wednesday. There'll be no Thursday meeting next week. And if you haven't registered and plan to attend the golf outing, please contact the Rotary office today if possible, so that we can get a count on how many lunches we need and how the golf will go. Other upcoming Rotary events, the Rotary office is closed tomorrow, which is the case with our meeting every other Friday at the office is closed. And we have White Oaks Park cleanup on Wednesday, the 16th as well, and that's at 6 p.m. So there is time to play golf and then get out to clean up the park if you have time. If you really feel active that day. It's my pleasure to introduce Joanne Rosner, who will give us a little bit of a talk on the World Community Service.
Okay, well, I'm happy to be here to give you an update on Growing Guatemala, our nutrition intervention grant. That is a collaboration from the 3 Rotary clubs via our World Community Service initiatives, where we pool our resources together. So first, I'll take a couple of minutes just to provide some background to those who may not be aware of or who may not recall much about the project, because we have given a couple of updates. But malnutrition and stunting have been major problems in Guatemala for decades with no good results. Back in 2013, the government of Guatemala signed on to what's referred to as the 1,000 Days Initiative, which seeks to improve outcomes for young children by focusing resources on the 1,000 days from conception through 2 years of age. So the 1,000 Days Initiative is a framework which prioritizes pregnant women and young children and emphasizes multi-pronged collaborative approaches. So the goal of our project, which was approved back in July of 2018, so it's been a while that we've been working on it, is to implement a comprehensive 1,000 days focused package of interventions in some very rural indigenous Maya communities that have extremely high rates of poverty, chronic malnutrition, and lack of access to health care. The project goals are to reducing the mortality and morbidity rate for children under the age of 5 and reducing the maternal mortality and morbidity rate as well. You may recall that this project was funded with funds from our 3 Rotary clubs. Collectively, our 3 Rotary clubs contributed $10,000 to this grant, We raised considerable funds from about 7 other clubs within the district, as well as a club in Vail, Colorado, of all places. And with some of the matching funds that we received, we had a total of $94,960 plus. So it's a very large, sizable global grant. The program has been conducted in collaboration with Maya Health Alliance, which is a local Guatemalan organization. It happens to be a recognized leader in the 1,000-day initiative in Guatemala. Implementation of our project, though it was approved in July, we couldn't begin it until we had all of the funds in place, and so that happened in November of 2018. Our project plan was to enroll 140 families with at-risk children in communities in some of the most rural areas outside of Tecpan. The project was intended to take 2 years, so that would mean we should be done. But due to the pandemic, this spring the project field work was suspended due to country restrictions in place to reduce the spread of COVID. So based on when the pandemic is under control, field work will resume so that the remaining gardens can be implemented. And that is probably one of the key pieces of the project that has not been completed. And also, our hope would be by getting back out into the field that additional measurements of children can be taken so that we can really measure the full impact that this grant has had. So to date, the takeaway message is that we have had 140 enrolled and have completed the baseline surveys. All 140 families have been receiving the nutrition intervention and growth charting on their children. 79 of the families completed follow-up surveys at the 6-month interval, which was a part of this. And then 14 of the families have completed the 12-month follow-up surveys. And because it's a sliding scale enrollment, we didn't enroll everybody all at the same time. We were actually on track with where we needed to be until the pandemic hit, and that's when we started to fall behind. 65 gardens have been built to date. The rest of the gardens were intended to be built this summer, but that obviously got put on hold. Approximately a third of the families, we've done the follow-up survey from the garden implementation, so we have some early results on the gardens. So as I said, right now, all field work is currently paused because of COVID. So our main risk, in my view, is implementation of the remaining gardens, which we are committed to do. It's just the timing is uncertain, as well as I'd like to see some more in-person visits occur so that more measurements can occur and so that we can reinforce some of the work that's already been done so that we gain that sustainability factor. So that's kind of where we're at. I do have a newsletter, and that I've sent to Elizabeth, and she will include a link to that so that you have the ability to see a little bit more information and also pictures, which I chose not to share today. So thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Let's get this today because
Okay. All right. We're going to, we had on the agenda to do a brief kind of an overview of the Rotary International fundraising, which of course the World Community Services Project is a part of, funded by. We're going to skip over that today. So Colin, if you would like to introduce the Paul Harris Fellow nominee and sponsor. I've got it. Oh, you got it. Okay.
Thank you, President Chris, and it's great for me to be able to say President Chris, and it's great to be back to the podium. And I think I speak on behalf of many Rotarians. It's good for Rotary to be back in a room together, taking small steps to get back to what Rotary does. So today, I am going to ask Dave Mortel to come up. We are presenting an award, the Paul Harris Fellow, to Dave Mortel, but he has designated it to a guest, and I'm going to call it, the guest is at the Rochester Public Utility table, at least 2 of the people sitting from Rochester Public Utilities. So I'm going to have I'm gonna guess Dave has a little ditty or a little to read, and then I'll carry on with my formal remarks. If I don't destroy, don't touch the iPad on the podium.
Thank you, Colin. So I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine named Jeff Krantz. He's a leader in our community that exemplifies service above self. Jeff works for the Rochester Public Utilities, and for any of you who have lost power after a storm, Jeff is one of our local heroes that works in all sorts of weather conditions to help restore power. He's been a leader with the local IBEW 949 Electric Union with terms on the board and as president of that group. He's an active member of Bethel Lutheran Church. My relationship, though, with Jeff is through the Boy Scouts of America. Back in 2005, he was the leader of a troop of boys who attended the Boy Scout National Jamboree at Fort A.P. Hill, Virginia. And my son was one of those boys, and he had a wonderful time, thanks to Jeff. Jeff has had multiple other roles in scouting. He's been a committee member, a committee chair, an assistant scoutmaster, a scoutmaster, a district and council training staff person, and currently he's the Hiawatha District Commissioner, which is a huge role here for Boy Scouts in southeastern Minnesota. He's received through scouting the District Award of Merit, the Scouter of the Year, the Silver Beaver Award. So you can tell how important he has been to that group. He's always given the best of himself, and he's given over 20 years to the program, always showing service above self. And it's my pleasure to nominate Jeff for the Paul Harris Fellowship.
Thank you, Dave. And if you just stand there for a couple of minutes, I'll read my formal Rotary remarks. And then at the end, I'm sure President Kress will want to get a picture of you. But the presentation of the Paul Harris Fellowship recognition is the Rotary Foundation way of expressing its appreciation for a substantial contribution, and we've clearly heard those today, to its humanitarian and educational programs. And it's named for our founder, Paul Harris, a Chicago lawyer who started Rotary International with 3 business associates in 1905. We moved closer to a world of peace and goodwill today as Jeff becomes a Paul Harris Fellow, and we thank Dave Mortel for designating him. Their gift to the Rotary Foundation's program is a commitment to peace and better life for people across the world whom they will never meet. This is truly a selfless act. It is because of gifts like yours that the Rotary Foundation is able to carry out an array of programs, and I'll just highlight those, including improved living conditions, increased food production, as we heard Joanne talking about gardens in Guatemala, better education, wider availability of treatment and rehabilitation for the sick and disabled, new channels for the flow of international understanding, and bright hopes for peace. We thank you on behalf of Rotary, and I have another award I will hand to Dave to give you. So there is an award, and I also will hand you a pin. Let's show our appreciation.
So thank you, Dave, for sponsoring, and Jeff, congratulations. Certainly appears to be a service above self award that's well deserved. So we're on to our program. I'm pleased to introduce to you Pam Meyer, who is the Executive Director of the Quarry Hill Nature Center. Pam grew up in Plymouth, Minnesota, where she got an early start in science, spending endless hours agate hunting in their neighbor's river rock driveway, and numerous exploring neighborhood ponds for crayfish and turtles. Being outdoors was an ethic, a way of life in her family, and even had a neighborhood club of kids known as the Boundary Waters Club. Pursuing her passion for nature and science led her to the University of Minnesota Duluth, where she received a degree in Earth and Space Sciences and Environmental and Outdoor Education with a minor in Geology. She also holds a current Minnesota teaching license for sciences grade 5 through 12. She considers herself lucky to have been able to teach in a diversity of nature and science centers from Los Angeles County Outdoor Schools of Science in Malibu to Massachusetts Audubon's Felix Neck Wildlife Sanctuary, that's a mouthful, on Martha's Vineyard, all the way up to north at Wolf Ridge Environmental Learning Center in Finland, Minnesota. She's been coast to coast and still feels Quarry Hill stands alone, unparalleled in its field with a fantastic staff and awesome natural resources right here in town. With that, I will introduce Pam Meyer. Pam, you have about 20-25 minutes. She's got a PowerPoint, and then she'll have some time afterward to answer some questions. So welcome, Pam Meyer.
Thank you. Okay. I don't often listen to someone read my bio, and when I listen to it, we spent a lot of time outside, and I think it's because my parents were always kicking us outside. So it's my pleasure to be here. I want to share a little bit about what's going on at the Nature Center, and then talk to you about something I'm really passionate about, which is the Monarch Migration, which we are at our peak right now. I always have way more content than I have time for, so I'm going to try and get through things and get to questions at the end. And I'm glad to be here, and my condolences. We will not, as Rotarians, be slinging hot dogs at our fall festival this year. We will miss that. So I think we have all our technology working. Elizabeth has worked her extreme magic. So fantastic. And I'm even going to put my watch right here. So how are things at Quarry Hill? Well, they're okay, which is, as any of us can say right now. When I was preparing this presentation, and then we're preparing for our appeal to our community, I read the first 3 lines of our appeal last year in 2019, and I thought it awfully striking considering where we are today. Dear friends, can you envision 2020 as the year we get outdoors every day? How many of you feel you have spent more time outdoors in 2020? Science supports that time in the outdoors aids the mind, body, and emotional health and development. And as we enter 2020, we are clearly focused on connecting people with nature. People have been spending a lot of time outside. I can tell you from our gate counter in front of the Nature Center, our spring visitation for 2020 was 10% higher than the year before. And that's particularly amazing considering we had no spring field trips. We had no summer camps. We have no fall field trips. The park is getting utilized in fantastic ways. And so for us, that's very mission filling. We have done a lot of pivoting. We joke around the office that it feels a lot like you're standing on sand all the time and you're always pivoting. And then we'll say, why don't my calf muscles look better if I'm doing all this pivoting? To make sure we are still moving our mission forward. Oh, did I skip it? I went too fast. I really, this is most of our staff, if not all, at the Nature Center, and I joke with them all the time. You guys are really outstanding in your field. Literally, they are outstanding in their field, and they are outstanding educators who have been thrown a huge curveball
like a lot of organizations, and have found ways to adapt and change that I'm just so proud of them. So I'm going to take you through a few highlights because everybody needs good news, right? We started the year with a brand new program, Emma's for Minnesota, building a language and a love for the land of 10,000 lakes. We recognize here in Rochester, we have a lot of families and especially kids in our school systems. They don't have a language yet. These are our newcomers. And so we said, we got to get these kids outside and build not only their language, but also their comfort. They're not native Midwesterners. And so we worked with Riverside Elementary and the newcomer program in Rochester Public Schools. And boy, did these kids get a winter to remember. We had a tremendous amount of snow. We got to build quinzies and we clicked right along until March. And then, well, we can't be together, but I can take an iPad and I can walk around the park and I can get you all in on a Zoom meeting. And it's not together, but it is. We've been doing a lot of synchronous and asynchronous learning. We had to run in a new direction, literally. We run a big 5K race every spring. We couldn't be together and we went virtual. Those are my two kiddos. I use them all the time. I have photographic permission to run our 5K race. We had the greatest participation in our race this year. People were looking to get outside and support what we're doing, which was tremendous. Camp in a box. Camp was hard to let go. This is camp, or it was this year. We had over 1,500 kids that couldn't come, and it's really hard for our staff. We live and breathe our mission, and so we couldn't be together. We said, well, so what can we do? And we put camp in a box, and we sent it to all the kids, and kids were able to connect with our staff through learning platforms. We put the tools in the box they need so that we're there for them. It's hard. Okay. And we're stuck. It was really funny. We had a lot of parents who said, oh, I gotta be my kid's camp counselor now too. Said, no, we gotcha. We're gonna take it from here. And are we back online? We are not. Okay. I can tell you, as Elizabeth is working on that, we, as a nature center we're hands-on. We are like together people. We are not screen people. We had to work really hard to find how do you bring green to the screen. And as Elizabeth is working on it, I will just mention our staff who are way comfortable in front of a room of 250 people. You put them in front of a camera to do a lesson and it's quite uncomfortable. We've put a lot of our content, all of our lessons online for kids. We work with RPS. In fact, that will be our model for this year for our science curriculum with RPS, is to go online. And I'll just mention, we're banking on sunnier days. We got our battery bank in our Prairie house. And oops, sorry, that's okay.
Pam, can I ask a
Yes.
question? So were you able to capture any of those like posts or selfies with kids doing the activities or anything like that?
Doing Camp in a Box? Mm-hmm. Yes. So our kids, we use something called Padlet, which is like a super easy website. Kids can navigate it. We built 3 of them. And what was really fun is the kids could post their pictures to Padlet of them doing their camp activities or sending our staff questions. And that was really a lot of fun to see kids had to find their own Quarry Hill this summer, and they did it in a phenomenal way. And I'm going to keep moving. So I will just mention, we went from, green time to screen time. We have, and Elizabeth, maybe you want to just click on that YouTube, a whole YouTube channel. We put our cave tour online. If you've always wanted to tour the Quarry Hill Cave, go to our YouTube channel. If you want to see me shake 3,000 plus bees into a box, go to our YouTube channel. We put a lot of our digital content and our lessons online. You can check them out on YouTube. We put a lot of videos up on Facebook too. We found a fox den in the park this spring, and it was, yep. And we put a trail camera on it, and we filmed it for a number of weeks, and then we put it online, and people's response was like, I need more nature in my feed, in my Facebook feed. So I would just mention, if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel or our switchback.
It's all sharing, sorry.
Elizabeth's doing great. I've done Google Classrooms with 140 kids, and that is a lot. She's doing a great job. None of this is easy, of
Sorry, I
course.
have another question.
Yes,
while we're doing all
go
this.
ahead.
I know when you were sitting at my table, you said you received Together funds.
Yes.
And did you use those to pivot in a virtual world?
Yes, we have been, Quarry Hill, over 50% of our operating revenue is program income, and that got taken away. We're fortunate in that we've got financial footings and funds like the Together funds through the Rochester Area Foundation, grants through Think Bank. Anywhere we looked to get support, we were fortunate to secure PPP loans, so we've been able to maintain our staff, which is critical. Our staff are our mission. So yes, we were able to do that. And I'm gonna just see, because this one if we can just show the first minute, and then I'm gonna talk monarchs.
Just doesn't like this.
It doesn't like.
Hold on though.
We know nature is something people can all share in right now. Can you see this? We actually found this when we were going to look for an owl's nest. And again, you would be able to go to our Facebook page and see all of her babies. So her kit count, we counted them over a number of nights. Okay. So what was fun that I like to tell the city, how many crows those foxes brought back. They were taking care of our crow population as best they could. Okay. So we have been doing our best, bringing as much green time to screen time. And we'll stop it there, and we'll not bounce back and forth. And I'm going to get to our monarchs. Yes.
My apologies, everybody.
Okay. We might be frozen again. Next time I know I won't do so much back and back. That one. Oh, here we go. Okay. Can I go to the next screen?
Get it.
So while we are waiting, any questions about Quarry Hill? I was going to do questions about Quarry Hill towards the end. Yes,
I have a
Colin.
question, and maybe we should repeat them for the virtual audience.
Sure,
You should.
I can.
So is the facility itself open, or is it just, can you comment on that?
So Colin asked the question if the Nature Center is open. We say we're open and we're doing our mission, but our doors are still closed. Quarry Hill falls under the 25% capacity for museums. We know that there are certain challenges that our spaces have, like our children's libraries and off-limit space. Some of our rooms only have one door in and out. Right now, we're putting our resources into our programming. To open the Nature Center, I can't have more than 12 people total. We don't have a ticketing system. We don't have the staff to necessarily run that. We are starting to open the Nature Center through programming. That feels like a controlled thing. So we've brought back a lot of in-person programming moving into August and September. Children's programs, we're running field days 2 days a week, all day for kids in the community. Our Sunday programs, families can attend and have time inside the exploration hall. We have a brand new adult series of classes, all about nature's bounty. What else? Lots of, and just really good things, knowing that there's a balance of digital and in-person and doing it smartly and safely. We're gonna see. Okay, progress it one more. I'm gonna skip ahead. So I wanted to share just before I launch into Monarchs, which is my favorite, one of my favorite quotes, and I think I kept coming back to this quote this spring. This is Rachel Carson, biologist, scientist, world-renowned for her book, Silent Spring. There is something infinitely healing in the repeated refrains of nature, the assurance that dawn comes after night and spring after winter. We have to look to nature. It is predictable in many ways, maybe not snowstorms, but the cycles of nature continue to go. We find comfort and refuge in that. For me, Monarchs is one of those things. We're about to say goodbye to all of our monarchs, but they will return. And so I'm gonna go into, will it not do presentation mode? Okay. So this picture I took down in Mexico. I was fortunate to go there a number of years ago. When I started at Quarry Hill, Greg Munson asked me what was my dream program. And I was a life science teacher at the time, and I said, well, I teach all about monarchs and where they go, and I wanna go there. And he made it happen. And so we were all able to go. Next slide.
Where in Mexico?
Central Mexico. So I'll show you on a map where we went. This is a quote. When you talk about monarchs, you have to understand in their story. Dr. Fred Urquhart, who is a Canadian zoologist, those who have had a dream and have lived to see that dream come true will have some conception of my feelings when I first entered the Mexican forest, and there before my eyes was the realization of a dream that had haunted me since I was 16. He is the most renowned monarch butterfly researcher. Next slide. He spent over 40 years trying to answer the question, where do all of the monarchs go? He started researching that question in 1937. How do we figure out they disappear and then they reappear? But they're not staying here, so where do they go? So Dr. Urquhart, 1937, wanted to apply what we do with migratory birds. That's a common thing we do. We take a bird, we put a bracelet on their ankle, and we let them go. Well, how do you tag something that weighs less than half of a paper clip? and not inhibit its ability to fly. And so there's these lovely stories about the first thing he tried was gluing paper to their wings, and that was a gluey mess. The second thing he tried was gummed stock, like a postage stamp. When I do this with kids, they have no idea you used to have to lick stamps. And there's a lovely story. He and his wife tagged a whole bunch of monarchs in a roost in California, and then it rained, and they got up the next morning and all the tags, they said it was like wet confetti all over the ground. Until someone finally said, you know what about the pressure adhesive, or the pressure adhesive labels they use in pricing guns? Can we use that? And it's actually a 3M tape that they use, and that was the charm. So next slide. Now we have a way to mark monarchs. So now it's 1952, we know how to tag monarchs, and he puts out an appeal, an article in a magazine saying, I need help doing this tagging, and I need people across the US. And I marvel, he had 12 people respond. Every fall, I typically do large monarch tagging events. I will have easily 250 people come. 12 people responded and launched the Insect Migration Association, which later has become Monarch Watch. So now they have a way, and he has people all over tagging these monarch butterflies, and the data starts coming in, but the trail is getting lost in Texas. They figure they're funneling down there, but they're crossing a border. There's a language barrier, a cultural barrier, and so the trail kind of got lost in Texas. So now we're 1972. So 1937, 1972, years of frustration. So his wife, Nora, decides to write to the Mexican papers, gets a translator, and pleads for people in Mexico to report their sightings. This is just such a great story because really is a vagabond. It's literally a man in a van who responds to him in a letter dated February 26, 1973. I read with interest your article on the monarch butterfly, and it occurred to me that I might be of help. This was a US citizen who was down in Mexico. His wife was a native Mexican, and they were traveling around in a van. And so becomes this relationship between a biologist and a scientist and your average Joe in a van. And it's a beautiful friendship of a lot of calling back and forth. Like I tell kids, they weren't emailing, they weren't texting. They were like collect calling and writing back and forth when something would get reported. And so finally, that was February 26th, 1973. The wait is over. January 1975. 40 years since he started asking the question, where do they go? They find it. It's not that they were lost, but we found where they were going. The search was over. That photo there was from a National Geographic article that ran with the breaking story, where all of the monarchs go. It's such a lovely story too. This is August 1976. When Dr. Urquhart and Kenneth Brugger really narrowed in where they all go, do you think they wanted to tell anybody? They wanted to keep it a secret. In fact, there's stories of him keeping it from other researchers because now he felt the weight of, I know where they all go. If I tell everybody, am I putting them at risk? So it's interesting, in the National Geographic article, it ran a full year after the discovery, and there is a map in that National Geographic that puts a little star where they all go, and the star is completely in the wrong place. National Geographic getting a map wrong? There's a lot of theories that he convinced the publisher to put the star in the wrong place, and they never really specify in the article other than saying they go to Mexico. But it only took one other researcher to look at the trees in the photo and know that they are oyamel trees and they only grow at a certain altitude. And he figured it out by looking at nature's clues in the photos of the articles. So this is a picture of Dr. Urquhart just minutes after you talk about divine intervention, right? He's been tagging monarchs for years. He gets into the sanctuary, he sits down. Within 5 minutes, what does he find? A tagged monarch. And the people who had been there had been scouring for tags, because that would be the proof, right? Is we got to find a tagged monarch. And he goes there and sits down. I've been there. That's a needle in a haystack. The odds of finding a tag, and it was Monarch PS397. 2 schoolboys from Chaska, Minnesota, released that butterfly in August 1975. So to understand just why they migrate, their motivation and their life cycle, we have to understand a little bit of their biology. Monarchs only lay their eggs on milkweed. That's their host plant. That's why it is so critical to their conservation. They stay in their egg for 3 to 5 days. They eat their eggshell. Then they start eating and feeding on the leaves. They will spend 9 to 16 days as a caterpillar before they will enter into their chrysalis. So when they come out of their chrysalis, if it is a non-migratory monarch, so monarchs show back in Minnesota in May. So, and then they mate and they lay all their eggs. Those monarchs that emerge in late May, early June, their life cycle is only 2 to 6 weeks. And their job is to build the population. A female monarch can lay 300 to 500 eggs. Her job is to build the population. Monarchs that are emerging out of their chrysalis now or over the next couple weeks, they live 7 to 9 months, and they are our migratory monarchs. They look exactly the same as a spring monarch, but they are biologically different. They're in a state of diapause. They cannot mate. They're not fully developed to do that. And that's the theory on how they're able to survive 7 to 9 months. We live in a pretty exciting area up in the, this will work, right? That can't make it any bigger. Okay, so it's kind of hard to see. There's this outline up here of the Corn Belt area. Over 90% of the monarchs in the overwintering sanctuaries come from that area, which makes the upper Midwest critical to their conservation. How do we know that they come from this area? We know by doing dissections on the monarchs in the sanctuaries. You can figure out what milkweed they've been feeding on and what latitude that milkweed grew on. And so you can tell where that monarch came from. It's just, the science is phenomenal. So monarchs will, so their habitat stretches all the way up into Canada as far as milkweed grows, all the way down into Mexico. And this is where our monarchs are all funneling down here into central Mexico. There are monarchs along the West Coast. When I lived in Malibu, we would see these in the eucalyptus trees along the coast. So there is a kind of a small subsection of monarchs that will winter along the coast of California. And then there's a small group of monarchs at the tip of Florida that are non-migratory. Most of the monarchs, though, will go to central Mexico. What I'm looking for signs right now with monarchs, it's pretty easy. They're nectaring intensely, gathering on the flowers. They need fuel. They're flying in directional flight. I tell kids they're not doing the butterfly like la-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da flight. They're like, I'm on a mission. I've got to fly over 2,000 miles and I'm going to take 2 months to do that. And I weigh less than half of a paperclip. And I've never been there before. Clustering in roosts. again, we're gonna run out of time here. You can track their migration through citizen science, through Journey North. I'll go to the next slide. So again, late fall, they're going to central Mexico. They go to central Mexico up in the mountains, not because it's warm, because it stays near freezing and it's humid. And that allows them to conserve their fat resources and kind of go into a kind of a stupor up in the mountains of Mexico. It's gonna take them about 2 months. An average monarch flies 46 miles a day in directional flight. One tagged monarch flew 80 miles in a day. We know all of this from tagging. That's what helps the research. So I just have pretty pictures now. This is the aerial view in Mexico. All of that orange right there are monarch butterflies. And this is the only way to really count the population is by aerial views. They'll go up and then they will draw boundaries around it, and they will estimate population based on the occupation. So if we go to the next slide, last winter, boy, that's hard. All of North America's migratory monarchs occupied a space of about 7 acres. That's it. It's not a big space, spread out over 12 different mountaintops. 6 hectares, I don't know if you can see that right now, is considered the threshold, what biologists want to see, critical threshold for survival. If there was something catastrophic, a frost, a hailstorm, our eggs are all in one basket, and at that low of a population, that could be devastating. So we're seeing good migration numbers. So we're hopeful going into this winter, we will have, they can estimate, it's 50 million monarchs per hectare, 50 million. And the reason they know that is in 2002, there was a deadly storm and it dropped all of the monarchs to the ground, and they were able to count them that way. So these are pictures of our trip that we went on. There was a group of us that traveled. When you go to a sanctuary, they are federally and protected between Canada, US, and Mexico. It is a joint protection effort. You need a guide to go there. This was our guide here. They're very heavily protected. We're talking armed guards and high razor fences because of illegal logging in the area. When you're there, it's like being in church, I tell people. Nobody talks. You have a sense that you are witnessing something really special. I love this photo. This is my husband right here, and people of our group. And I love it because if it were any other insect other than a pretty butterfly, people would be freaking out right now because they're everywhere. We went to 3 sanctuaries. This was at our last one. Our bus was stopped when you cross a Mexican border. It's not uncommon to get stopped, and we got stopped, and they took Greg off the bus. They took our interpreter off the bus, and our bus driver off the bus. And they said, "Who are you? Where are you going?" And they're armed. They're very heavily, and we're all sitting on the bus looking out the windows. And they said, "Well, we're a bunch of teachers and biologists from Minnesota, and we're here to study monarch butterflies. And we're going to this sanctuary." And they said, "No, don't go to that one. There's no monarchs there." There's a lot of economics around which sanctuaries are visited. And we said, well, we were going on really good authority that this is a really good sanctuary. And the armed guards were like, no, 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 go to this one. And so we decided, we'll do what the armed guys tell us to do. And we drove there, and it was out of our way. These are very rural Mexico locations. And we get there, and that sanctuary was open every day of the week, except the day we were there. But when you roll up in a coach bus with 20 people from Minnesota in a very rural Mexican village, you do not go unnoticed. And a man from the village said, if you agree to rent our horses, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who has the key to the sanctuary, and we can let you in. And it ended up being the most phenomenal sanctuary we visited. There was intervention there to push us here. And I know I'm out of time. They roost in a tree called the oyamel tree. Its Latin name translates to mean holy tree, because when you bend the tip of the branch down, it makes the cross. They like to roost in that tree because it allows them to cluster by large numbers. Remember, we're talking 50 million monarchs per hectare. They will snap branches off of trees. This was one of our members on our trip had the forward thinking to take a picture of an oyamel tree before. This was in the courtyard of where we were staying, and after. They will pull those branches down. It's, you know, that last sanctuary we went, we parked at the bottom of the mountain and we took our horses, or some of us who were sore enough from riding horses for days, walked. There were so many monarchs streaming down, we thought by the time we get up there, there won't be any. And then we stopped to look around. That's not bark on the tree. Those are all monarchs. It was just phenomenal. And the next few slides, I might skip due to time. We tag monarchs. Next week at Quarry Hill, we're calling Migration Madness. We're doing outside programming for families 2 times a day, where we will, we're a federally licensed bird banding station. We will be trapping birds, migratory birds. We will be tagging monarchs for release and talking about connecting people to the seasons of nature is really important right now. So we tag them and we let them go. They're even in the Guinness World Book of Records. What is important to realize that sometimes I feel gets missed, the monarchs that are leaving now fly all the way to Mexico. They stay down there. When they kind of come out of hibernation in the spring, they mate. The girls lay their eggs in northern Mexico, southern Texas, and their life cycle is done. Then those monarchs go through their life cycle and they push further north, maybe to Missouri. They lay their eggs, their life cycle is done. It's a relay return, so that the monarchs we see in May are 4 generations removed from the ones that went south. And the ones that are leaving now have never, ever, ever made that journey. And they will go to the exact same mountaintops in Mexico. That's the magic and the wonder of nature. How do they know where to go? How we don't know. And that's what's so exciting about what we do and research and just the unknown and beauty of nature. So I will take questions, and Elizabeth, well, if you are wondering, I get this question, what are the odds? We've tagged over 2,400 monarchs and only had 17 total recoveries down in Mexico. Needle in a haystack. And I will take questions, and Elizabeth, if you can let that play in the background. Are there questions about migration, monarchs, plant milkweed? That's one of the #1 things you can do to help them. Joanne?
So is there a chance of damaging or hurting the monarch when you lose the monarch when that happens?
No, we don't. Monarchs are pretty tough. It doesn't hurt them. It would be like us carrying a 1-pound weight. Putting a tag on them is the equivalent of us carrying around a 1-pound weight. It wouldn't stop us from running or skipping or jumping.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
I've always been intrigued, you know, when I was a kid, probably most people in this room at one point or another had a jar and put a monarch in it to let it come out of its cocoon and all that stuff. But I've always been intrigued by the pattern of the wings on the monarch.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that they're all unique to each monarch. Is there a template or a footprint or a wing print?
So his question was, are the wings all the same on the monarchs? They are between girls and they are between boys. They're the same. There's a slight difference when you're looking at their hind wings. The boys have 2 black dots. Those are their pheromones to attract the girls. So they are the same. They have that, you know, bright orange and black coloration as a warning. Because they feed on milkweed, which has that sappy latex where they get their name, it makes them unpalatable to predators. So there are other butterflies like the viceroy that mimic. That's a great example of mimicry. They want to look like a monarch so other things don't eat them, but viceroys don't eat milkweed, so they taste just fine.
Those are yellow, the more yellow ones.
No, they're orange and black. Viceroys are orange and black. In fact, when I do my tagging, I'll catch a bunch of monarchs and I always catch viceroys because on the fly, you really almost can't tell the difference. Thank you for bearing with technology. And Elizabeth, she did great.
Get this back up to readable. So Pam, thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting. Even in spite of the difficult technology, it was definitely an interesting program, and it obviously Quarry Hill is a place that we can go to both online for helping our kids and grandkids, and so we look forward to more programs from you. Just to let you know, we have an honorarium that we give to all of our speakers, and we dedicate that to one of several local organizations, and Elizabeth will share with you later what those would be. So thank you again for your time today and your presentation. I guess my chance to use my gavel again. So we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming today, and again, we will do this if all the cards line up correctly again in a couple of weeks. And we appreciate your making the commitment to come out. And to those of you on Zoom, have a good couple of weeks. And remember, we have a couple of programs coming up. So in the meantime, as we adjourn, go and serve, and remember, Rotary opens opportunities.